Your questions answered. In this video, I'm going to talk about different processes and techniques. Basically, your questions which you've asked me on YouTube, Instagram. I even have people email me or message me and have questions. And I want this to be about the wood carving, the sculpting community. And so I want to be able to keep my ego in check, and because some are not all questions, some say this could be better or I'm using it wrong, which, after 40 years of experience, it is, I do feel a little humble, but they're right. And I want to experiment. And so if you stay with me, I'm going to show you all kinds of tools and techniques and answer your questions personally. Again, this is about building community in the woodworking, wood carving, sculpting, whatever you like to do. My main focus is in wood, but I do talk about other materials on my page. And primarily wildlife sculpture, but not everything is wildlife sculpture. I just did a video about wood carving and wood sculpting. What is the difference? And this is not a question, but Alec Lacasse, who has a substantial following and is also full-time professional wood carver, he says, I took a look at your channel last night. Very informative stuff. Nice to learn some of the proper terms used in sculpture. So I'm glad to help. Again, I have a master's degree in sculpture, but I grew up wood carving since I was 10 years old. And I've studied with a lot of great wood carvers, including Vic Hood, Bob Googie, Larry Barth, Jamie Welsh, Jim Wilsford. There's actually so many going around different shows. So I've established myself as being one of the best wood carvers in the country by just getting back-to-back second best in show awards at the largest wood carving show in America, the Charlotte Woodcarvers Showcase. Now this isn't that piece. I have a different video on that piece. This is a new composition for a bobwhite quail, one of my specialty birds, and I'll talk a little bit about processes and techniques and tools which people have asked. I also have videos available on my website which I'll refer you to on how to individually carve, texture, and paint to get all. I can't answer all the questions because these videos are a couple hours long, but they're available on my website, and I'm going to answer some of your questions. First, I have a video called "Which is the best Arbortech power carving tool?" And just yesterday, Steve Gale writes, it's not a question, but I've learned something. This is the Turbo Plane, probably my favorite Arbortech tool, an angle grinder that I use. I use a lot of different angle grinders for my outside work. However, it turned close to 100 degrees. Actually, with the heat index, it was 95. With the humidity, it was probably 100 degrees here the last couple days. So I've primarily been working it inside and not outside. But I use the Arbortech tools outside because they remove large amounts of material quickly, and I'm all about that. So Steve writes about the turbo scraper, which I was demonstrating. This is the Turbo Plane. I've been looking for my turbo scraper, but after not having the best success with it, I kind of put it away and I can't find it. However, Steve says it's not supposed to be used in the same way as the Turbo Plane, which is my favorite tool. Okay, it cuts on the edge of the tool. Okay, the plane has its blades here. The turbo scraper has its blade here. It actually removes a lot less wood, but it actually scrapes the wood away. And this will hog the wood away. It'll grind it away. So he says you should try to carve it. Cuts the edge like a chainsaw with a delicate feathering away from the material. Okay, so I'm gonna have to practice that technique. Not this way, but more this way, using the edge technique. So stay tuned for that video. I really appreciate that tip, Steve. After carving with power tools for over 40 years, I'm still learning, and I really appreciate all your suggestions. Another question Monica writes on a video, actually it was just a show. I showed my work where I display my work, and Monica writes, this was a heron, I have cattails. She says, what is the cattail powder you are using, please? So let me show you the cattail. Now, I did a show recently, actually that was at the Charlotte Woodcarver show, and I think it didn't get, it got a little bit broken here, but I used wood, and I've already pinned this with metal, that's why it didn't break off. But this did get broken a little bit in transporting, which I don't like. This is a very difficult piece to transport because it's so long and linear, and it's wood, steam bent wood. But she's asking what I use for the making this magical dust, she says. Or no, she just says, what's the cattail powder? It's not really for cattail powder. Not using anything real from cattails. This is all wood. However, whenever I carve, I will save the material in a little Dixie cup or any kind of container. I have different containers. This, I think, is mahogany dust. I also have dust from all kinds of woods. Pine heart, this is redwood, this is a bark, cottonwood bark. And I'll keep these little containers with the dust in them. And basically I create that dust with different bits, okay? Like this tungsten carbide bit, or just a bandsaw. I like the dust pretty fine. However, this dust is not super fine. Okay, this comes from a tungsten grinder bit, and I basically try to match the color of the cattail with the color of the wood. So I believe this is mahogany dust. Either that, it could be like redwood. I don't remember exactly, but it was a hardwood, yeah, like mahogany. I'm pretty sure it was mahogany. Okay, and I put glue on there. In fact, and I sprinkled the dust over the glue. And I had to do that a couple different times. In fact, I showed that in one of my videos. I think it's a short, a 30-second or a 1-minute video, and you can watch me 6 months of making a grape little heron with cattails, and basically in 30 seconds, I can show you how to, at least show you how to make the cattail. But I also show painting videos of how I paint the heron, as well as many carving techniques and many other videos. So good question, Monica. And feel free to write in your questions if I didn't answer it here. I don't get a lot of feedback on my YouTube channel. I guess I don't have, I'm monetized, but I don't receive any money. I did receive some tools, not these tools here, but I have received some tools in the past from supporters like Arbortech. And gosh, I don't even know how to use their tool properly. So I got to do a better video on that. And thanks a lot, Steve, for that tip. Now, a good friend, Jeff Albert, I say a good friend. I've seen him a couple times in an outdoor sculpture show in Lenore, North Carolina. And we both won top awards, I think it was 3 years ago, Awards of Excellence, which is about a $500 award. For an outdoor sculpture show, that's pretty darn good. Or any show, really. And Jeff does wood sculpting, okay? And my last video, I talked about the difference between carving and sculpting and the different processes involved, additive, manipulation, other processes besides subtractive process. But Jeff writes, seeing a golden eagle bust that I did and sold via my social media account. I can talk about how I do that as well. He says, amazing as always. Okay, tech question. What system, material, processes do you use to mount something? Okay, this is a mount, like this to stone. Okay, I had a wood carved golden eagle on a stone base. And the collector said it's one of the best purchases he's ever made. It's out overlooking a river where he lives. And Jeff also wants to know, what is your go-to adhesive? Now, I answer that in other questions and other videos, but for this kind of thing, and so this is mounting. It's not the stone, but on that video with the difference between wood carving and sculpting, I will demonstrate how to mount a very complex piece. and that is an installation. I show a wood carving, and I show how to make it into a contemporary wood sculpture installation, postmodern art. Talk about some of the concepts there as well. Basically, he wants to know like mounting a piece, okay? And I showed in that video how I use chalk and how I draw onto the base. I get the correct orientation, okay? This way, you have to do it 2 different ways so you know where you want to mount the piece, where you want to drill down. I don't use a drill press, I just freehand drill, and I will have to do that twice. I'll have to do it at the base, and I'll have to do it into the bird. Okay, in this case, I use square tubing so they could come back out and won't rotate. So I drilled 2 different holes, and it's telescoping sizes too. My go-to adhesive for this kind of thing, whether it's stone or wood, even metal, is well, actually metal. I'll weld metal primarily. Sometimes silver solder, but for wood and stone, it's 5-minute epoxy. You know, other night I used some an hour. It was like 30-minute epoxy, and it took like an hour to set up, and I was there holding it forever. This kind of stuff you just hold together, or you just mount it in place. And I have helping hands and other kind of things. Well, my whole table's about to move here. So put this back here. This is all dry. It takes a number of hours to get full cure. But that's how I mount a piece. I will draw first with chalk, drill in, put the 5-minute epoxy. It's a 2-part catalyst and resin. You mix it together, it has a thermal reaction, it gets hot, and you only have 10 minutes of working with it, okay? Actually, probably more like 5. You want to work pretty fast because it'll start gelling up. And I've demonstrated that in this video, not this video, but other ones. I don't have my 5-minute epoxy with me here, but I'm just talking about the different processes. So it's an additive process of adding the metal and the glue to the piece. You've already done the subtractive carving, and just experiment. Do one at a time, I would say. Put one rod in and glue it then, and the other one in here, because if you try to do it all at once and that glue starts to run a little bit, say you put it in a little bit early and the glue's not firming up. Actually, I want to do that because it firms up very quickly. But sometimes the pieces will get locked together if you try to do both at the same time. And that's not good. You're trying to do too much. So take your time and practice. But 5-minute epoxy, you can get it in a syringe, but I prefer separate bottles. You can get that, I think, through DevCon is a brand. There's different brands, there's, JB Weld. But it's a 2-part glue, okay? Epoxy glue, not epoxy putty. I use epoxy putties too for like making the feet. People have asked me on that. And that's actually in the first answering your questions video. So this is part 2, answering your questions on YouTube. So Jeff, let's see, what else? Okay, so in stone, it's not much different than wood. The difference is you're using different drill bits. I use a diamond core bit. I use glass cutting bits on marble. And this piece is sold, he's talking about, so I can't really show the piece. And again, this is not a new quail, but it's, I'm going to talk about some of the process of carving here in a second. Let's see, what else does Jeff say? So yeah, for gluing it in stone, the 5-minute epoxy works. Just like in wood, make sure you get all the dust out of the hole. Okay, it'll adhere much better and much faster. And also make sure the hole is not like too loose. The epoxy works best. I learned from a structural engineer and mounting a outdoor sculpture that was over 1,000 pounds in bronze and metal, and he had to be on site to approve how I was doing it. And he says when you drill through that granite, those holes need to be pretty much the similar size as the metal you're putting into it. Okay, so I had to mount the sculpture, a big bronze owl that was 6 feet tall, something like that. Actually, it's taller than that. more. You can actually stay underneath it. It's like 8 feet in total with a branch. I had to mount that to a granite base for an outdoor sculpture, and I use exterior epoxy glue for that. And the structural engineer, talked about the right size holes. Again, diamond core bits are the best way for drilling in stone, Jeff. But Jeff is a great wood carver. Look him up. He's got a YouTube channel. Good concepts and great form with his work. And I appreciate the question, Jeff. And please go ahead and ask any other questions you have. In fact, I get questions. I'm getting interviewed right now for a publication. I get I'm in books and magazines, and people write. I get articles written. A few times a year. It's pretty good. And sometimes those lead to nice follow-ups. So I think it's good to get your work out there, and name out there, and answer questions. This is how you build community. You learn. And I also love to answer student questions. I've got a student who asked me, a 12-year student at the Art Studio Production. He's studying Art Studio Production. He's a 12-year student at the Friends School in Tasmania. Okay, that's the opposite side of the world for me. I'm in Georgia, above Atlanta, Georgia, Marietta, Georgia, United States. So this is from Wavy. And Wavy says he's doing an active investigation. This is a course assignment, and he's investigating an artist similar to what his interest is or what he's inspired by. Okay, I'm paraphrasing a little bit because he's got a long list of questions. It took me a while to answer. Unfortunately, I didn't have a ton of time, so that's one of the reasons I'm making this video, Wavy. So I hope this can answer your question as well as other people's questions, because I get these questions a lot. And well, first he starts something kind of general, and this is a nice question. He says, what do you what draws you to animals, in particular birds, as a reoccurring subject in your artwork? Great question, Wavy. I love animals. I love being outdoors. I love nature. I was first drawn to birds because of their colors. I became more of a bird watcher, hiked up to the top of a mountain when I was, 14 years old. And I was already starting carving when I was 10 years old. But I really was drawn to birds. I hiked the top of this mountain. It's called Kennesaw Mountain in Georgia. And I saw the primary colors in one tree. I saw a red, I think it was a tanager. I saw a female, a summer tanager, which was yellow. And I saw indigo bunting. So you got the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, all in this one tree. It was amazing. I didn't even know you could get all those colors in one bird. And there's a painted bunting, which is also in Georgia, which has all those colors too. So I'm drawn to the colors. I've also been always drawn to birds, and they can fly. It's so amazing how they migrate, the distance they travel, how they catch food. I guess the more I just study birds, the more my infatuation grows. I'm an amateur ornithologist. I love learning and studying their behavior. And that informs my art. It's very important to know your subject matter. And no one really has asked this question here, but I can't stress that enough. Whatever you make, do something, if you can, that you're knowledgeable about, because that knowledge will come through in your work. If you don't know the anatomy of a bird or the colors, you got to research it and study it, okay? Whatever you do, that knowledge comes out through your artwork. Also, it takes skill and technique. So next questions Wavy has, again, I spent about a half hour, probably longer, answering his questions. So I'm going to briefly go over them here. He asked, do you have a individual story or idea with your work? Yes, I do. It's actually, a lot of times they're layered with meaning. The individual story is more about the bird, the bobwhite quail in this case, and showing a little bit about his habitat, and showing the beauty of the bird, the size, the correct proportions. I'm trying to show off the bird in the best light possible. To me, everything is interconnected in nature. The balance, I asymmetrically balance the sculpture. It's kind of precariously balanced, if you notice. that's kind of like a subtle hint on the bird populations and what's happening right now in all of nature. We're all connected. Everything is a balance, but it's a precarious balance because a lot of birds have, and we've lost 3 billion, there's 3 billion fewer birds in North America just in my lifetime. So also, meaning behind my work is very spiritual to me. I retrace my ancestor, William Bartram's footsteps. He was an early American naturalist, considered the first in America, American born anyway, naturalist slash artist, that described a lot of different species and plants. The next question was similar. He wants to know the message being told in each sculpture. I try not to have a literal message, Wavy. I try to have it general and interpretive. I do abstract work. Some work is very personal to me. I believe all art is a self-portrait and your individual message will come through, but some things aren't so literal or you don't want to make them literal. They're more private. It's something you struggle with or something. It comes through with your art, and things are layered with meaning. I think I went to grad school which was very conceptual, getting my master's degree in sculpture, and they were interested in how the work looked. It was all about the idea. And to me, I want the work to look good. I want to show the beauty of nature, but I also want to show personal iconography, my connection to the natural world, William Bartram, birds in general, but also other subtle messages about the plight of birds, the balance, the kind of precarious balance, and spirituality. I did my thesis on Bartram. So many different concepts there, but to me the work has to look good. It has to have good craftsmanship, look good, and have an idea, okay? So I'm not gonna go too much into my messages, but you can read my artist statement, also look at individual works, and I do write about my work under my in my website and on my Instagram page, and I'll talk more about concepts and meaning of my work on this YouTube channel. I think that's a great concept because I'm working on a new emerging piece. So my next video will be on that, Wavy. So great question. Okay, and then Wavy, last question of this series is going to be important to a lot of people. I get this question a lot, and that's technique. And I'm going to show you different tools and techniques on which I use to get soft texture. Wavy wants to know my approach to sculpting feather texture in areas around the body. What is my general approach? That's a great question, Wavy. And I have a bird here right now I'm working on. That's a bobwhite quail, another bobwhite quail, and this is kind of a foraging position. I have actually a trio. I'm doing a covey of quail. When you have a grouping of bobwhite quail or any kind of quail, it's called a covey. I've done a covey rise and flight, but this is going to be all foraging quail, walking and searching for food. So again, it tells the story with the work, and it's quite an elaborate piece, but I've got to make one more quail, and I'm working on this quail as well as a commission, so that's nice. But I approach, I don't know if you can see this here, I'll show details here at the end. I approach the whole body of the wood, or the bobwhite quail, as like a landscape, okay, with hills and valleys. Okay, I'm not just generally making up these hills and valleys. I will look at photographs, I will look at mounts, I look at the real bird where I had an aviary, and I see these in the individual like side pocket groupings. You have different feather groups, okay, on our bird. The tertials, the primaries, the tail feathers, under tail coverts, upper tail coverts, chest feathers, back feathers, and all these I want to get a little bit different technique. The primary feathers and tail feathers are a little bit stiffer, and these body feathers are very, very soft, especially right along the flank or the under rump. Okay, and so I bumped a lot of these feathers. Okay, that's done with this tool here. You can do it with hand tools. I know a lot of good hand carvers, but I'm primarily a power carver, and this is the Esprit 500 by NSK America. It's made in Japan, and it's a dream. It goes to 50,000 or 55,000 RPM. I generally don't do it that high until I'm texturing. So let me explain this a little bit more, Wavy, because Wavy wants to know in general. He wants to know. I think the questions were. Let me look at it exactly here, so I can spend a little more time answering. Okay, let's see. Gonna find the questions here. Okay. He says he finds the sculpting feathers around the body, like the chest of a bird, quite difficult. I would really love to hear how you ensure that it comes across as layered and feather-like, while not being too overwhelming, like a one-to-one replication of every single feather. Well, first of all, when I started out, I was trying to do it in one-to-one replication of every feather. I would count the feathers, and I really studied the mounts in my birds. Having aviary was an invaluable resource, so I could get the exact size and shape of the feathers, and so I almost was trying to replicate. But the more I studied birds, I looked at the grouping of feathers was much better because they look more scale-like when you try to do every individual feather, and that's not good. If you look at the birds, I try to get like hills and valleys, more of an interesting surface. Again, there's no round spot. I mean, no flat spot in a bird. Everything is very round. Okay, I have mostly convex surfaces, occasionally a concave area. So he wants to know, particularly around the chest. Well, the chest feathers generally, if you orient the carving or sculpture like I do, the chest is usually the hardest part of the wood. Okay, that is in grain. So you will need sharp tools or high-speed grinders, and also you need to sand that surface. The key to soft feathers is sand, sand, sand. Okay, and you don't want to skip grades. You want to start with whatever, get your tool marks in, you put in. Like this Kudzall is a pretty fine tungsten carbide bit, and this is a steel bit, but it'll also leave little tiny little tooth marks. So you want to probably start with maybe like 100 grit, maybe 80 grit. Maybe to get really rough grits out, you got to start with like 60. But Tupelo wood sand's very easy. Lime wood or basswood or other woods, pine heart, redwood, each one, it's a little bit different. But the key is sanding. So you go to different grits. So you go up, 100 grit, 120 grit, 150 grit, 220 grit. I even go all the way up to, say, 600 grit, and then I polish the surface. So there's all different kind of bits. I use hand tools. So about texturing, so to make it feather-like, so he wants to know, what is your approach to texture areas? Or do you do as you go kind of situation? So, or is it more as a do as you go kind of situation? Wavy asked. So do I wing it? Do I just kind of like make up the feather groups? Yes, sometimes. Okay, but I have that knowledge of where those feathers lie and those shapes. I've sculpted the quail quite a bit, okay, and just birds in general. So I will know kind of where feather groupings are, but I would recommend drawing them out and kind of getting those flow lines, looking at photographs, so you're not just winging it. Because I've been in the competitions, and judges will call me out and say, it looks like you didn't know the proper shape of that feather, or the size of the feathers look too big, and they'll all get picked apart. Because competitions are judged by ornithologists, taxidermists, scientists. At least in the World Championships, Ocean City, Maryland, the War Foundation, which I competed since I was a teenager. Not so much anymore because I approach this more as an art form. Okay, so Wavy talks about back to texture. What techniques do you use to create the fluffy, feathered look around the body that makes it look so realistic without having to sculpt each individual feather? So we just described not sculpting individual feather. I did bump quite a few feathers here, but I more grouped, I bumped and carved the groupings of several feathers. Okay, so they're kind of grouped together in clusters, and that's kind of how I like to do it. So there are different ways after you carve those feather groupings, and you get those hills and valleys, and it's interesting. It's very round, but every little area has an interest. It's not a smoothie at all. It's very textured. Okay, then I'll go in with tools. Okay, it's like this is a riffler tool, and I'll go in with like the edge of it, and I'll make some of these little splits deeper, where the side pocket overlaps the back feathers. Okay, I can even put in some of the primary feathers. This is a diamond riffler. There's steel rifflers, different kinds. There's embossing tools. I experiment with, I demonstrate actually quite a bit of different tools to get that feather-like, almost hair-like texture. It's not hair or fur, this is feathers. This tool also, I've got stones that I put in, and I use it very high RPM, at least about 30,000 at least. And the stones produce a very fine texture, which I did in these underparts here. I don't know if you can see that. I'll show close-ups at the end. At least I'll stone the edges of the feathers, and then I'll wood burn the other parts. I always wood burn the heads or the back of the birds. Here's the head, and I really undercut a lot of feathers here. So my approach is to make it realistic and to just make an interesting surface, make it look soft by sanding and sanding and sanding. And if you get my video, the second video on the bobwhite quail, I will show how I texture the softest looking feathers in wood. And that's followed by painting the most realistic feathers in wood with acrylics and oils. And those videos feature the bobwhite quail, but they can be used on any bird. And I have a student who bought all 3 of those, so I'm helping him. And I do give private lessons. 2 of those videos come with a private lesson. And so it's one-on-one help. And I give consultation as well if you have questions. And feel free to ask me any questions. I'll be glad to answer them for you. Again, those videos are on my website. Probably the carving video is the most popular video. I explain really how I make patterns, how I carve, how I get the anatomy right, how I sand, how I do those individual groupings and feathers, which bits I use, the different techniques, all different techniques from setting eyes, glass eyes, what kind I use, lots of different steps. And then the same thing with texturing. The wood burning techniques, I learned really fine wood burning. I mean, hundreds of lines per inch since when I was a teenager. And my eyes aren't quite as good now, but I will wear glasses, and I will look at the surface, and I will look at, even with a magnifying lens, and I will magnify my mistakes and try to get that real smooth surface. So great question, Wavy. That was an awesome question. I thought about answering questions to a lady who's interviewing me, but I got to wait for that publication to come out. Let me give you some close-ups of some of these works here. And thanks a lot for your questions. I appreciate you subscribing to my channel. Okay, here's Bob. A little blurry there. Okay. Here's the head of a bobwhite quail. And here's that body. I already had the feet drilled there. You can see a lot of bumping of those feathers. And that's going to look like this. Let me see if I can turn this a little better here. After I individually texture those feathers. And I can't get that close up. That's better. Here's the tool, the NSK America. It's called a high-speed grinder. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day.